Bonjour classe, nous allons discuter le petit déjeuner. Alors ça, c'est un petit déjeuner français typique. So petit déjeuner is the phrase for breakfast. And what you're seeing on this table right here would be a typical French breakfast. So we're going to learn how to name most of the items here. And the other thing we'll be talking about is comparison. What do the French eat for breakfast? What do Americans typically eat for breakfast? So to go through each of these, there are a lot of cognates here, words that look and mean the same in French and English. So I'm going to have you do a little bit of guessing, but we're also going to practice pronunciation. So I'm going to say each of these just as if we were in class. I want you to repeat them after me, just as if we were in class. And while you're repeating, I want you to see if you can take a guess as to what that phrase means. And then I'll reveal the picture so you know actually what it is, okay? Alors, répétez. Un fruit. Le fruit. Une banane. La banane. Une pomme. La pomme. Un pamplemousse. Le pamplemousse. Now, I do not want you filling out anything on your vocab sheet right now. There'll be time for that after. We're just going through and learning the words and practicing the pronunciation, okay? Notice the word fruit is a cognate in how it's spelled, but it sounds very different. That U-I-T almost sounds like a W-E sound. So even words that look the same sometimes might have a completely different sound to them. So this one is fruit, okay? Alors, répétez. Du pain. Le pain. Pain is just the generic word for bread, any type of bread. Une baguette. La baguette. Un croissant. Le croissant. Un pain au chocolat. Le pain au chocolat. So pain is the generic word for bread. We see all different kinds of bread here in this basket. Une baguette is, in English, we use the word baguette. But what I want you to understand about baguette is what it refers to. Baguette refers to the shape, and this is quite often what people may call French bread, so like a loaf of French bread. But there is an important distinction if you're shopping in American grocery stores between what's labeled as French bread and what's labeled as a baguette. If it's labeled as French bread, it's going to be a long loaf of bread, but it's probably like pretty squishy. It's basically the same as white bread, but just longer, and it doesn't come pre-sliced, okay? If you want something that is closer to authentic French bread, first of all, you need to look for something that is labeled as a baguette. The word baguette actually means stick, okay? So it's like a stick of bread. And what makes a baguette is that the bread itself is much more dense and actually kind of like flavorful, if you can call white bread that. It's very different from like a traditional loaf of bread or a traditional roll in the texture. So it has a really dense texture and it has a really hard, crunchy crust on the outside. So like you could actually kind of like rip off a piece, but you would have to use a lot of force in order to do that. So if you're looking for good, authentic French bread, look for something that is labeled as a baguette. And you want something that is like if you squeeze it through the plastic packaging, it's not going to bend. It's not going to give in. You want something that is solid on the outside. That's how you know a good baguette, okay? Probably the best French bread that you can find around here, the baguettes that you get as a side at Panera, those are really good and those are really authentic. Those taste pretty much like real French bread. And Breadsmith, which has a couple of stores in Green Bay, has a really good baguette that is very authentic as well. Theirs are much more expensive. I know that sometimes we've gotten baguettes from Walmart and they've been pretty good too, and they're a heck of a lot cheaper. But you want to look for something that is dense and has like a crust on it, okay? Un croissant, we might call this a crescent roll, and we call it that because of the shape. So the definition of a croissant is that it's a flaky, buttery pastry, but it is in the shape of a crescent, like a crescent moon. And un pain au chocolat, if you look at the meaning of this phrase, pain, of course, means bread. Au chocolat means like with chocolate. But as you can see, it's not chocolate bread. What a pain au chocolat is it's basically the same pastry that you would use for a croissant, but instead of a crescent shape, it's just kind of like a little rectangle, and there's chocolate on the inside. So little melted pieces of chocolate, almost like as if you took crescent roll dough, but rolled it up in a rectangle shape, but you put like a couple of Hershey's squares in the middle when you baked it, and then there's melted chocolate on the inside. So that's what a pain au chocolat is. Moving on, répétez un toast, le toast, du pain grillé, le pain grillé, du beurre, le beurre, de la confiture, la confiture, une tartine, la tartine. So obviously we can figure out this one. Pain grillé literally means grilled bread. It's another phrase for toast. So toast is the English word that's just kind of been borrowed and adopted in France. So you might hear that. But if you hear pain grillé, it refers to the exact same thing. It's just the authentic French way of saying it. Okay. Beurre, butter, that's pretty logical. Confiture is jam. Now, une tartine is a combination of those things. A tartine, the way I define this, is bread with a spread. A tartine is a piece of baguette, usually, so you can see this is a slice of baguette here. A tartine is typically a piece of baguette that has something on it. So it might be butter, it might be jam, it might be butter and jam, it might be Nutella, some type of a spread or some type of a topping on it. That is une tartine. And you might have une tartine for breakfast, or you might have une tartine as an after-school snack as well. Des œufs, les œufs. Notice that you hear the S from des or les carry over to the beginning of the next word. So we hear des œufs or les œufs. Also notice that that F at the end is not pronounced. Now there's kind of a weird rule here. If you're only talking about one egg, then it's un, but then you do pronounce the F at the end. So one egg would be pronounced un œuf with the F, but multiple eggs is des œufs, and we don't pronounce the F at the end. Du bacon, le bacon. Un yaourt, le yaourt. Des céréales, les céréales. Now you may have noticed that for each of these items, we have two different articles that we're using in the beginning. And we're going to talk more about that as we continue. But what you're typically seeing at the beginning is either an un or an une, a des, if it is plural, or in some of these we have a du or a de la instead. Un and une, of course, mean a or one, so un yaourt is a yogurt. Des is the plural of that. We learned about this earlier this year. Des means some, so some eggs, if we're talking about more than one. Some cereal, because each of these little pieces is essentially a cereal. So they say cereals because it's made up of multiple things. Or some bacon. So du also means some, but as in kind of like part of the whole. Like you're not having all of the bacon, you're just having some bacon. The other article that we have with these is le, la, or les. And we know that le, la, les all mean the. So le yaourt is the yogurt, le bacon, the bacon, les œufs or les céréales, the eggs, the cereals. So you probably can't think of many situations where you would say the eggs or the cereal, but we'll talk about when you use that in French. For right now, just pay attention to the fact that for each food item I give you, I'm giving you two possible different articles that you might use at the beginning with those. Now, in terms of how you use those, if I asked you this question, qu'est-ce que tu manges au petit déjeuner? What do you eat at breakfast? You would answer, d'habitude, je mange, and you would probably use that first article, the un, une, du, or des before your food item. So if you say that you eat eggs and bacon, you would say, d'habitude, je mange des œufs et du bacon. Okay, so these are the articles that we use when we talk about what we eat. Of course, we have to have some beverages to go along with our food items. So here are our beverages. Répétez, du jus de fruits. Le jus de fruits. Du jus de pomme. Le jus de pomme. Du jus d'orange. Le jus d'orange. Du jus de raisin. Le jus de raisin. De l'eau. L'eau. So whereas we would say fruit juice, apple juice, orange juice, grape juice, notice that you flip around the order in French. You say juice of fruits, or juice of orange, or juice of apple, or juice of grape. Yes, the word for grape in French is actually the word raisin. The word for water is made up of the letters E, A, U, but you don't actually say any of those sounds. Pronounce this as if it was one giant letter O. You pronounce E-A-U as O. So if you're familiar with the city of Eau Claire in Wisconsin, you can remember it that way because the city name Eau Claire actually means clear water. So this word is pronounced O, like the letter O. Alors, répétez du lait, le lait, du café au lait, le café au lait. So lait is milk, café is the word for coffee. The French for breakfast typically don't drink like straight up black coffee. They typically have coffee with milk or coffee with cream in it. So something that's not really watered down, but something that has a lot of milk or cream to kind of soften it. So café au lait, or you might also hear this as café crème is another term that's used. Alors répétez du thé, le thé, du chocolat chaud, le chocolat chaud. So milk is not much of a beverage in France, but of course you might use that in your cereal. In general, the French don't really drink milk. It's not a beverage, it's an ingredient or it's something you put in your cereal, but they don't really drink milk. Thé is tea, and chocolat chaud, we wouldn't think of this as a breakfast beverage, but in France, they actually drink hot chocolate typically for breakfast. So adults might have their coffee and kids might have their hot chocolate. So once again, you have two articles for each of these, and almost all of the beverages that we've seen begin with either du or le. Remember, du means some. So some milk, some hot chocolate, some tea. So if I asked you this question, qu'est-ce que tu bois au petit déjeuner? What do you drink for breakfast? You would say, d'habitude, je bois du. Usually, I drink some, and you would use whatever article starts with the letter D. So for most of our beverages, it is du to go along with those. So those are the breakfast items that I want you to know.